It's the Cavaliers Basketball Club Podcast.
It's basketball time at the cube. LeBron left to the circle, left to the lane. Gonna go all the way and hammer it home.
Everybody on their feet. Sends it for three. Oh, are you kidding me? It's over! The 52-year drought is over! The Cavaliers have won the NBA championship!
We wanted to go in a different direction. We wanted a different approach.
Sexton is low! That's what they came to see! Do it, young man! Do it!
And welcome to the Cavaliers Basketball Club podcast. My name is Adam.
My name is Colin.
This is a podcast about everything happening with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Our show will focus on the love of the game and, most importantly, our love for the Cavs. We'll be covering the games on a weekly basis, giving you cutting-edge fan analysis, along with dissecting some of the bigger moves taken by the team and the franchise, as we witness their latest attempt to rebuild.
You heard that right. This will be a cutting-edge fan analysis-based podcast. We've been fans for the Cavs for 20 plus years and fans of the NBA even longer. We want to accomplish having conversations about what it means to follow your favorite team. It's hard to get in-depth coverage of a team like the Cavs the way major media markets exist. ESPN hardly covers our games and rarely say anything when the Cavs win. The Cavaliers Basketball Club podcast is what you need for this team.
The shoot-around.
So with about 20 games into the season, we're starting the podcast off a little late, and we apologize for that. However, we would like to do a quick overview of the Cavs so far and kind of what we've observed. In the preseason, the Cavs went 2 for 2, losing both games to the Knicks. And of course, they've struggled with the Knicks this season. Still, preseason has rarely meant much for regular season success, as we know. So Jetty, Okoro, and Garland, they had a great game together against the Pacers, starting it off with a win. All three ended up showing a lot of promise in those admittedly meaningless games. What did you think about the preseason, Colin?
I had similar thoughts, and it was good to see that Okoro was more than I think what a lot of people could have expected, given he was drafted just, a little bit earlier, just a couple weeks before even playing for the Cavs.
He's supposed to have offensive shortcomings, and he scored quite a few points in the preseason. Granted, it's the preseason. But
yeah. And the Pacers historically have just always been a team that is well put together. And again, it's just the preseason, but to show some level of competency, I thought was promising.
Yeah, they really looked like they had been a team together already, even though they had added these extra pieces. And, Jetty always impresses with second and third string units against him, so I wasn't surprised to see him do well in the preseason. Okoro, for me, was the larger surprise. And Garland, everything that was out there about his maturation and the things that he was working on in the offseason, it was surprising to see that it was working for him at that moment. But again, I just never take any stock in the preseason.
You always hear these people put on weight and, this person's been watching game film for 80 hours a day.
Exactly. Yeah.
They come out and you're like, what?
He's been taking guys one-on-one in the practice. And it's like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah. But it was good to just see that Garland was comfortable on the floor with the rest of the players and was getting to certain spots, dictating, not just being a player, but actually driving the offense, which is a point guard, a really big task.
Yeah, and they clearly felt comfortable having him start the season at the point, which was, I thought, a nice maturation, both for him and the team.
Yeah.
You've got Sexton being able to move to that 2 guard and really be devoted to that for the season. Now, let's get into that. Through the first 6 games, they were moving the ball, running smart plays, playing smart basketball. To me, they looked like one of the 90s clubs with their limited three-point shots, their crushing numbers in the paint, and their assist totals made them one of the best teams right out of the gate.
Yeah, definitely.
Then the injuries started mounting, and our stats started to tank. You had the national media not paying any attention, as usual, assuming that the Cavs were just bad again this year. At one point, when they played the Utah Jazz on January 12th, our starting 5 were Nance Jr., Jetty, McGee, Okoro, and Dotson.
Whew.
Think about that, people. And then you got Stephen A. Smith saying that we're one of the worst scoring teams in the league. You're not paying any attention.
Yeah, those are moments in the season that you wish you never have. I would assume that Bickerstaff would like some of that earlier in the season, but having injuries to young talent like that in general is difficult. Bickerstaff definitely has something going on with the squad where they were able to eke out, like you said, a couple wins. There were West Coast teams mixed in there, which, as we know, the West Coast is always difficult to play. And there, you just have less repetition against those opponents as well. So you're not familiar with the Grizzlies and Utah as much as you would be with Detroit or Indiana.
Certainly the talent pool has been much larger in the West for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
And we've only started to see some evening out of that. But
yeah, thanks, LeBron, for going to the West. So.
Yeah, thanks. That was a big evening. That's for sure. It's a major scale tipper.
Yeah.
We still somehow managed to win 2 in that 6-game stretch, though.
Right.
I thought that was the most impressive. I do agree with you. I think JB Bickerstaff, he has them playing the right way. And even on the nights they don't play the right way, I love the things he has to say about the little finer points that they have to start addressing in order to become a better basketball team.
I would say that you and I have been, following this team for so long. They've had so many coaches, obviously before the LeBron era, but even in the LeBron era, they had way too many coaches. And Bickerstaff is one of the few, if not the only, where you're watching the game, you're kind of seeing what's happening with the team and what they're not doing and what's successful. And then he'll do a press conference and he'll say almost the same thing that you're thinking. The passing is off, not rebounding well enough in, quarter 1 or quarter 2. And he'll say that. It's just very refreshing compared to, oh, they didn't try hard enough. So yes, they didn't try hard enough, but what else? So.
That brings us to the last few weeks with the Cavs seeing their starters coming back from injury. They've also added some new additions during the fanfare of the Harden trade, and we'll talk more about that here momentarily. But for me, the Cavaliers, and one of the things that excited me about starting a podcast, you can tell that the organization got over that hump. Not just Cleveland, but the organization got over this hump, which is now that no one can take away from them that they are a championship organization.
Right.
And I think it didn't occur to me before that when people come to Cleveland and they play on our court, they look up in those rafters, they see the banners, they see the pedigree now. They have something to lean on and say, we know what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And granted, that's not to take anything away from the players and somebody like LeBron and how they're responsible ultimately for bringing the championship here and the coaching staff. But again, it's really lifted our organization up. And because of that, I'm excited more than ever to see us rebuild and become champions again. Mm-hmm. And to me, more of the right way. Instead of building overnight, you build from the ground up and you win through adversity and through draft picks and smart trades and all of that. So I'm excited about where the Cavs are at today.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that, and this will be something we will expand upon through many podcasts. I think it's the combination of that pedigree mixed in with seeing results. We talked about Garland earlier. Larry Nance is another guy. Obviously, Colin Sexton. These are 3 guys. There are more. Windler's coming along well. Looking at how they're performing compared to how teams that were without LeBron in previous years, they will get blown out occasionally. Obviously, the Celtics game was not fun, but they look like they belong. And I think that that's a big step in the right direction. And a lot of that is with Bickerstaff really getting a lot of great buy-in and with some good moves by Altman. Ultimately, there'll be a lot more stories about this where Altman and Bickerstaff are more on the right page. We know that Altman was really excited to draft Okoro because when they met with Okoro, Bickerstaff immediately started just being like, oh, we can put him here. We can do this. We can do, we can run these types of concepts. And Altman was like, all right, let's, he drafted him for that excitement. And obviously also he agreed that he's a great basketball player. I think Okoro has a ton of potential. But yeah, it's, you're seeing player development mixed in with the organization understanding where they are and what they can do. The fact that Sexton and Garland and Windler and Okoro, all recent draft picks, look like they belong on a basketball court is so much different than Anthony Bennett.
Yes.
Like,
amen. Yeah, absolutely.
So, it's refreshing.
Yes, and I would say that that's probably one of the best words to describe the Cavs this season. Refreshing. They're not going to win every night. Some nights they're going to frustrate you, which this last game that we watched, there was nothing to talk about from that game that was positive. Even going through and looking at the articles that were written about it, everybody admitted sometimes you have a stinker. This is a stinker. Let's not talk about it, right?
Yeah.
So with that being said, let's highlight a couple of games from the season so far.
Yeah.
And talk about what we saw.
Let's go to the tape.
Now that we've discussed at length what we like about these new look Cavaliers, let's talk about a few games that impressed us, maybe depressed us. Not sure, but let's highlight a few things that we've seen in the last week or two and talk about where we think that's going to take us.
I think initially we wanted to tackle the trade that got us a couple awesome Nets players and put James Harden with the Nets.
Absolutely. I could not believe that this trade happened. Let's just go into quick detail about why this is significant and how it helped the Cavaliers. So for the casual fan, I think it's important for us to explain kind of what has transpired. And James Harden is probably one of the top 10, I would say definitely one of the top 10 shooting guards in the NBA in the last 10, 15 years. Love him or hate him, he's a terrific shooter, terrific basketball player.
Definitely.
Now, Harden has been disgruntled. You can definitely tell from the exterior that he's not happy with some of the moves Houston has made over the last year or two. And in the last month, that has become, exacerbated to the point where he found himself in a press conference being asked what can be done to be more competitive as a team. And he said nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, Colin, you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah. He called out the rest of the players on the team and said that the players on the team were not good and that they would not get far with those players. And the players on the team are some pretty solid players. Also, quite a few are players that played with him getting to the Western Conference Finals or into the playoffs in the West.
Exactly. Yep. No, it's I heard a few media members say it was in bad form for him to do that. But, of course, the Houston Rockets basically within 24 hours found a trade partner through the Brooklyn Nets and the Cleveland Cavaliers and a minor partner in the Indianapolis Pacers. And they found a home for Harden to go to the Brooklyn Nets. Now, everybody in the NBA was jumping up and down talking about this, including all the analysts on ESPN and everywhere, because it's three of these unbelievable shooters teaming up. Now, I have a lot of opinions about that, and we will get there, I am sure. For now, I will say, I'm just ecstatic at what the Cavs got out of the deal.
Definitely.
And I could not believe that the league and the analysts that cover the NBA were not talking about that more. The reason why they didn't talk about it more is they have not been paying attention. Mm-hmm. So they don't know that these additions make us a better team because they think we're a bad team.
Yeah, I think getting Taurean Prince and getting Jarrett Allen, those two players are not only steals to get in this trade. NBA Twitter acknowledged that this was a steal for the Cavs, basically because of Allen, but I think Prince also is a bit of a steal for the Cavs, given he's only 26. He's another wing that can be relied on for defensively and has a good shot, an outside shot, has a solid mid-range game. And I mean, I'll let you talk about Allen because we could gush for days.
Well, I will say this, I'll start with talking about Prince because Prince has been a pleasant surprise for me. I think what I have loved about Prince right out of the gate is that not only did he come in with a fire to prove himself, which I think a lot of players on our team feel that way. It's one of the things that make the Cavs great this year. Mm-hmm. Prince being a pleasant surprise, corner threes, taking the ball off dribble, fadeaway jump shots, pounding the glass, starting at power forward when we've needed him to. For our team, you couldn't find a better fit. And then with Allen, okay, come on.
Yeah.
Come on. Allen is a franchise keeper.
Yeah.
You can make a lot of arguments if you want to. I don't. About bigs don't matter in the NBA anymore. But I really think that the Cavs are proving that can change by the amount of points they're getting inside, by a lot of nights being limited on their three-point selections, and using bigs that bang the boards and stay underneath. That's an old school way of playing the game that I can appreciate. So with Allen coming to our team, I know a lot of people think he should be our starter immediately, but being 22 years old, some of the things he said right when he came in was that he's excited to be a part of our organization, thinks that the coaching staff and everybody's going in the right direction, and that he only has an upside with a team like us, and that he's excited to be with the place that wants him.
Yeah.
You know, all too often the ego gets in the way almost immediately. And this guy's already been in the league. This is his, fourth season?
Yeah.
Because he came in when he was 18 years old. So the fact that the Cavs have a chance to hold on to this piece and add to their young core of talent makes it possible for this team to not only be great in the future, but be great for the long term, for the long haul.
And Allen specifically knows kind of who he is. You know, I think he will look to expand his game. You need this piece of Allen because he is the 6'11", 7'6" wingspan of a player who is that additional kind of freak who can protect Sexton and Garland defensively somewhat, can do a little bit of switching. He is the dream of a center to me in today's game. You know, I agree. I think more physicality is needed in certain areas, but he's kind of that epitome to me because his athleticism, along with his overall just tenacity, is not seen in a lot of bigs.
I like his quickness. I like his hands. I like his basketball IQ for being 22.
Yeah.
So nothing but upside.
Yeah.
And a total steal. Thanks, Nets. Checking the tape, I want to recap both of the Nets games that were just in the last week.
Definitely.
So on January 21st and 23rd, we faced the Brooklyn Nets. We've gone over what happened with the Harden trade. And of course, everybody wanted to see this new, what would we call it?
Three-headed monster.
Yeah, that's a good one. I would say two Kobe's and an MJ, you know, but everybody wanted to see how they would gel together in their first game. Durant, Harden, Irving. On paper, awesome. If I was playing 2K, I'd have a lot of fun. So coming into the game, I thought we had a good chance. Turns out we did. First game, we beat them in double overtime, 147-135. Second game, we beat them 125-113. Now, granted, second game, they did not have Kevin Durant, but still, for a team that everybody's going to say on ESPN or other news networks that we shoot one of the worst in the league and we're one of the worst teams in the league, nobody expected us to come out and basically smack them in the mouth.
Was there a key moment or play or player from either game that really stood out to you?
Yes. Now, the first game where they went into double OT, you got to highlight Colin Sexton.
Yeah.
The guy wears number 2. It was Kyrie's number when he was here. He wears Kyrie's shoes. He clearly has a lot of respect and admiration for the guy and for his game, at least, right? He entered the court with a few minutes left in the first overtime and hit a dagger, three-pointer, right in the face of Irving. Kept the game tied. They come into the second OT, and he just continues that pace, right? He scores 20 points, 20 consecutive points. He does what we have not seen since LeBron James did that in the playoffs when he faced Detroit. Remember that game?
Yeah. It was at least 20 points.
Yeah, I think it was about 23.
Consecutive. Yeah.
Something like that. It was just another example of how Colin Sexton is proving the haters and the doubters wrong. That the team, when he was drafted, didn't believe in him.
Yeah.
Wanted him to be traded, wanted him to be gone. Just from the adversity that he's had from the first few years in the league, he's consistently gotten better year after year. Now he comes into this game on national television and scores 20 straight points for the Cavs to come back and beat them 147-135. As far as the second game is concerned, I'm going to highlight two guys, actually. Jared Allen and Taurean Prince. And I think you have to, because they had a hunger. They had a desire to go out there and prove to their old team, hey, you're going to miss us. I loved that Allen got 19 points and 6 boards. And with Prince, he had 14 points and 3 boards. But I remember him coming up with some pretty big shots in that game.
Yeah.
Some demoralizing shots. I have to pick both of those guys. They didn't have the pizzazz of what Sexton was able to achieve in the previous game. I was just excited to see that right out of the gate, they gelled with our players. They worked well within our offensive and defensive schemes, and they came out and they beat their former team pretty convincingly.
Yeah. The Nets games were extremely important for the Cavs as an organization, essentially moving forward in some type of positive direction. They were able to show to the rest of the NBA that they can be taken seriously, and they can show up against a Brooklyn team that is considered the number 2, if not number 1 best team in the Eastern Conference.
Certainly favored to go to the finals, right, in the East.
Yeah.
The minute they added Harden.
Yeah. And the Cavs, they haven't had that positive outlook since LeBron left, since Sexton got drafted. Wins like that give the fan base hope, and they give this very young team growth, which is extremely important.
I love 2 things that are consistent in a lot of the games that I see the Cavs now play, whether it's a win or a loss, but it certainly seems to help us win. I've always believed in the small ball, the skills side of basketball to win games.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Cavs, if they can consistently get better at the free throw line, if they can turn the ball over a little less, because they're averaging a great turnover rate on the other side of the ball. They're second in the league for forcing turnovers.
Mm-hmm.
But they're also, some nights giving up just as much as they get. So for the most part, I think they're a team that is just exciting because they do the little things in a team-based way.
The final seconds.
This being our first episode, we've been hard at work producing the show. However, the Cavs are playing 3 or 4 games a week, and we're still playing catch-up.
Here are just a few extra points we wanted to mention before wrapping up today's show. The last 9 games, the Cavs have 2 wins and 7 losses.
Yeah, these last 9 games have been brutal. It's been difficult to watch simply because their offense has been stagnant a lot of those games. Their passing has been less than stellar. Their defense has kind of fallen off. So lately, yeah, it's been tough to watch. Were there any games that stuck out to you in that stretch?
It's really cool that Bickerstaff preaches that a certain player can take over on a given game for the Cavs and be a standout player. But it also is telling in these results where it seems like the offense just doesn't know what to do at times. The Clippers game stood out to me because the Clippers dictated that entire game. The Cavs showed a lot of heart, and they stuck with one of the most potent offenses in the NBA. But ultimately, they settled into how the Clippers wanted to play that game, and the Cavs really need to do a better job of adjusting during the game to actually win.
The blowout that came from the game, the 121-99 final score, is kind of what I expected, but if you watched the whole game, the first half was close. They really didn't lose hold of the game until about halfway through the third, and then, of course, in the fourth quarter, which has been very common in these losses, they're just not able to put the ball in the basket. They shot 92 times in that game, which was actually 13 times more than the Clippers, but they shot 44%, and the Clippers shot 55%. They just continue to struggle from the field the later the game goes. Looking at the stat line, we shot 10 threes and made 4 of them. As a team in today's NBA, I don't think we can survive shooting that little of threes and be competitive. Next up, it was nice to see LeBron back in Cleveland. He hadn't been in town since 2018.
I thought it was awesome to see LeBron in Cleveland again. I just wish he wasn't wearing yellow and purple.
Amen.
All the accolades that he's earned are warranted. He's unbelievable. He's one of the craziest athletes I've ever seen in my life. He literally is a kid from Akron. It's really cool to see that, given that I grew up in Northeast Ohio. I just wish the Cavs had won.
The minute he missed that fadeaway shot at the end of the third and was heckled by a Cavs exec, I was fearing for the outcome. I may have even texted you that, this could be rough in the fourth quarter. He outscored our team 21 points to 19 in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Hats off to that man. Am I upset that he left and came back and left again? Yeah. But that's the nature of the game today. It's very uncommon for players to stay in one place. I have nothing but respect for LeBron James, especially on a court.
The Knicks and the Timberwolves losses were embarrassing. The Cavs need to find the same intensity for every game, regardless of the record of the opponent. They need to not be afraid to shoot the three as well.
Growing up, watching Jordan play, one of the things I always loved about him was this tenacity of, I don't care what your record is. I don't care if you're good or you're bad. I'm here to beat you.
Mm-hmm.
And I really want the Cavaliers to have that mentality moving forward. You know, I think they're playing down to some of their competition, and that's upsetting to see.
I agree. The Minnesota game, I almost thought was more disappointing just because for some weird reason, the Knicks have their number. Karl Anthony Towns was out for that game. He is their best player, hands down. He's a 7-foot point guard that also plays center. So I thought they played down to their opponents, and I also was really frustrated with the amount of turnovers they had. Being careless with the basketball is something that this team just can't do, especially when they're reliant on such a young core that when they shoot themselves in the foot like that and turn the ball over that often, they're lucky that they were in the game as much as they were.
And finally, 2 keys to their losses, Sexton being held to under 20 points and the Cavs not passing the ball. Fun fact, the Cavs have won all of their games this season when dishing out 25 or more assists as a team.
For this last point, I think you highlighting the fact that the Cavs have won every game when they've had 25 assists or more is just one of those like aha moment stats. I think the Cavs need to move back to having Sexton running so much that he's just tiring out opposing defenses because, yes, he has solid size, but his key, his super level talent really is his speed. And if he's able to utilize that even more, I think that that'll get the ball moving in motion and will be so much fun to watch.
Sexton needs to score 20 or more a night.
Yes.
These games where he's held under 20 points, that's not successful for the Cavs. And okay, maybe a couple of other guys step up, but that hasn't been the case. Drummond can score 30, 35 in that situation and will still lose. He's not going to take threes. He's not going to stretch the defense, and that's how you get more from your team. They need to figure out how to pass the ball more, but they also need to figure out, again, to be more diverse within their shot selection. I think they just get excited. They got a lot of speed. They get out in front. They're trying to push the defense down the court, and before you know it, they've missed yet another layup.
Yeah, they just need to work on finishing around the basket. I think this is Drummond's kryptonite this season, his field goal percentage. And we should talk about this in future podcasts. His field goal percentage is maddening.
All right, that's it for today. We want to thank everyone for listening, and we'll be back soon with episode 2.
Thanks again for everyone that's listened to this first episode, and we hope you like it enough that you'll listen to the second.
Thank you for listening to the Cavaliers Basketball Club podcast. Let's go Cavs!